Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Bladewolf and I'm here to talk about motorsports and sim racing from a furry perspective. Today I will be talking about the balance of power in motorsports and how it is used in various categories in order to keep the racing as fair and equal as well as exciting as possible. The balance of power is widely used primarily in sports cars championships and touring cars especially, in the likes of GT3, GTE and even the British touring cars, the BTCC. So, how does it work? The way balance of power works, especially in sports car, is to help that various different machineries with different personalities and traits to be as competitive towards each other as possible. This is done by either adding or subtracting the weight of a car by using a ballast, or by changing the power boost of each individual cars. This process is done in a few ways. One of them is by going by previous race results when I compare each cars to a number of races, then work out the averages and then change the power or weight to suit to help bring them into line. The other method is by using an individual independent driver who tests various cars in a number of laps and then work out the average lap times. And then, like did with the other method, they then adjust to suit whether it's by weight or by adjusting the power. However, making these adjustments to the cars to help balance them out is not easy, as different cars from different manufacturers, especially in both GTE and GT3, have all different characteristics where performances changes can affect cars in many different ways, and it's not always the same result either. For example, in a simplified way of talking about it, taken from dailysportscars.com website, a front engine car can be affected by both weight change and or changing the power boost. If they want to slow down a strong performing front engine car, they can do this by adding 30 kilograms of weight ballast to the car, or by reducing the power output by about 30 brake horsepower. From this is the way they tend to use to help to bring the cars into line. As for a mid-engine car, for example, they're a little bit different. By adding 30 kilograms of weight ballast does not affect them nowhere near as much as a front engine car, and they only tend to lose a minimal amount of time. However, dropping 30 brake horsepower does affect them a lot more, and because of this, when they try to bring the mid-engine car back into line, they tend to adjust the boost only in order to help bring them back into line to the other racers. However, another problem to the balance of power is that it's not always perfect when you do make these changes, as depending on what they change can also affect the cars in different circuits as well. For example, on the power dependent circuits like the Paul Ricard in France and Spa in Belgium, the reduction of power can make a huge substantial difference, where a car with a reduced power can end up being at the back of the pack because of the reduced power. However, on other circuits like Brands Hatch Indy layouts for example, it does not have the same effect, as sometimes having a little bit less power means they can put the foot down a little bit more with little wheel spin, and it makes it easier to go around on some corners. However, there is another way the balance of power can be applied, especially in something like the British touring cars and the British GT3 Championship, where they use something that's called a success ballast, where depending on where they are in the championship in each race, they gain a weight ballast depending on how high up the grid they are. For example, going by the British touring car method, if one car is currently leading a championship, they'll get the maximum of 60 kilograms of weight ballast that they must carry for the next race, where the second place car will also take 54 kilograms for the next race, as well as a third place car with 48 respectively, and this is carried on with 6 kilogram less per position all the way down to the 10th place. As for any cars outside the 10th place position in the championship, they will carry no weight bias whatsoever. The idea of this is to help to prevent one car or driver to run away with a championship and help to keep racing as close and competitive as possible. And to be honest, from a person who actually likes watching the BTCC quite regularly, it does work, as it's quite often to get different winners at different races, even on the same circuit as well when the championship tables changes. But what about other sports categories? Well, in other categories like IndyCars and Formula E, despite having multiple different powertrains on each of the cars, they do share a same aero package and therefore less affected by both performance, and they don't usually need balance of power or success ballast to improve the spectacle, especially the fact they tend to have a much closer mixed up racing in general most of the time. So, what about Formula 1? What can Formula 1 do to help bring the cars to make it more fairer for everyone? To be honest, this is a difficult one, as Formula 1 has always been about the pinnacle of motorsports, where throughout the histories it's always been plagued with teams that's dominated throughout each decades, from the Lotuses in the 1970s all the way up to the current Mercedes in the 2020s. We also have other teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and even at one stage Williams, who had dominated throughout the numerous successive years. However, this may sort of change when a new rule set come in 2021, although probably in a slightly more watered down form compared to the other sporting categories. On top of a new budget cap they are bringing in to equal amount of spending for each of the teams, they are limited to about 145 million. And they're also going to apply to something which is called a sliding scale of aero development, where depending on where they finish in a championship in the previous season will depend on how much of testing allowed on each aero or components. How it will work is that the team that finished first in the 2020 season will have a reduced amount of time for runs and testing of components, with only 90% of the current testing allowed for 2021. This also gets further reduced from 2022 onwards down to 70% when the new cars come into effect. On the other end of the scale, the team that finished 10th and lower will get 112% of error testing and runs permitted, which also gets increased to 115% in 22 onwards. The idea of this is that hopefully over time this will bring all the teams in line with each other and hopefully reducing the advantage they get and gradually making more competitive racing, and hopefully that over the years we have more varying of different cars winning the races and or championships. Whether this works remains to be seen, but it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out. Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you do, please hit the like and subscribe button on this channel. See you soon, and hell you later. Awoo!